Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I decided to put in a bit more effort, make the videos a bit more professional, and hopefully the editing will be a bit better as well. So in the previous, I'd looked back at some of the other videos and they are pretty bad. There are hanging clothes in the background. I haven't made much of an effort in my appearance in the other videos, things like that. But today, no hanging clothes in the background, so a bit more professional. I'm not wearing a jumper. So yeah, I thought I'd make a bit of effort. I'm wearing a normal top, bit more professional, bit more like a video, and I think the video in itself is a bit more interesting than the other videos. It's a book review kind of. So hopefully you enjoy. But yeah, it's a bit more exciting, and we'll get going with it then, shall we? So the book that I wanted to talk about was How to Stop So I've got some notes as well that I'm reading off. So the book I want to talk about is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. So I listened to the audio, I didn't actually read it, but whilst I was listening to it, I made some notes. I think I've got the general gist of it. It's a self-help book by Dale Carnegie. It was published in 1948, and Dale was a lecturer and a writer. General comments on the overall feel of it. So it feels very well structured, well defined parts. The whole point of it is, even the author in the introduction mentions that a lot of the things that the advice that you're given in this book are things you've probably heard before in quotes. An elder has probably told you at some point as well. So just general life lessons that you've probably heard. You've never really had a chance to apply, or just you didn't think about it that much. And what he does is basically he surrounds these lengthy stories, sort of proving that these age-old pieces of advice are good, and if you actually follow along with it, if you action just one of these pieces of advice, it will have a good outcome and you will see visible results. There are reoccurring solutions given. I think it's intentional. So the book is repetitive, but it's intentional. So obviously repetition will help it go in. Hopefully it won't just go in one ear and come out the other. I think that's the point of the repetition. If you are looking for a book that's sort of straight to the point and just gives you bam bam bam, do this, do that eventually, but it's surrounded by so many stories that this will become annoying for you. So I wouldn't suggest it if you are that. But if you've got time, and he's very to the point as well, some person that's had more life experiences talking to you, so it's more of like a father figure and things like that. So there are some harsh comments here and there. He does get into you a little bit, just so you can grow up a little bit and just take some personal responsibility. So he does do that, which I like. But so yeah, so on the more humbling comments that it makes to you directly, the reader, one of them, it is quite funny. It actually made me laugh a little bit because I was just not expecting it to come out that way. So the quote reads, "As you grow older, you start to realize you are in the main to blame for most of your misfortunes." So just to the point, and just hitting the person right where it hurts. But yeah, so that's one of the humbling comments. And another one is being sorry for yourself and take some personal responsibility. So yeah, so this is what I mean by like it doesn't even, it's some comments like that which are a bit harsh, but sometimes they give you a push. Those kind of comments do give you pushes, but you're saying this to you, so it does give you a little bit of a push. Like it, but some people might not like it. As you grow older, you start to realize most of your misfortunes are it does depend on your circumstances, obviously. So I think if you've been through a lot and objectively they weren't your fault, if that maybe won't be the nicest. With quotes like that, if you have been in situations where you haven't been able to control it, so it hasn't necessarily been your fault, it gives out quotes like lemons make lemonade and things like that. So making a good of a bad situation, that lemonade quote, obviously we've heard a load of times, but utilizing on your gains is easy, is to profit from your losses. So you've got those messages. And when I mentioned the lengthy story, so on a simple quote of "when life gives you lemons, make lemonade," obviously we've heard it loads of times, but on that simple quote I think it was an attorney who really was sleep deprived, as in he couldn't even get a few hours in a night. He just couldn't sleep, and instead of sort of just constantly worrying about it and just sort of feeling sorry for himself, he just, at those times where he couldn't sleep, he just got out his, started working. So the game, and he became a really famous attorney, and he became really successful because after a while, after you've tried medical intervention, you've tried a load of things, and it's still not working for you, then worrying more about that issue isn't really going to do much. In another part of the book, he mentions that the amount of time we spend worrying, if we spent just half of that time actually fix the problems at the root, we wouldn't have much to worry about. So he mentions, so other quotes like, I think there's literally a quote of "be yourself" in there. I can't remember the story surrounding that, but it's very, very cliche quotes, things you've heard a load of times, but there's a story around it, and in the end it comes to be yourself. By the lengthy stories, gripped me, I think in the book, gripped me was this quote: "My life has been full of misfortunes, most of which hasn't happened yet." I loved that quote, because it's just, anytime I have to do something, I've got something on my mind for the next day to do, I don't know, I picture everything going wrong, things happening that are just never gonna happen, right? So that was just an instant connection to that, and that's why I actually decided to listen to the whole thing. That quote was really, I think he, in the book, he was quoting someone else, so that's not a direct quote from him, I don't think, but I really, really liked that. Living in the present day, there's no quotes like, "There's no use in crying over spilt milk, what's done is done," things like that. So living in the present day and trying to make the best of it. So forget about tomorrow, lock out tomorrow and lock out yesterday, and just focus on that day. And then he even narrows it down to per task. So whatever it is you have to do, down to task level, right? And put all your attention on that. And don't think about it in terms of the bigger picture, because if you have to write down the amount of things that you have to do, and you look at that, it can be scary, because like, how am I supposed to do all of this in this time, blah blah. So ignore that, task by task, look at that one task and just try and do it. So that's the kind of advice that he gives. Piece of advice that I like is all he gives is, don't have time to worry. And that, so it's a form of, I guess, occupational therapy, which is a legitimate way to sort of not focusing on your troubles, is literally do something, do anything, and it will take your mind off it. And he brings up Churchill, when he was, how do you not worry about the current situation of the world? Basically comes back with, "I don't have time to be worried." I think he worked 16-hour days at that time. Literally didn't have time to worry. So there is that. Keeping busy is really liked as well. Just about the power of, does manifest. It's not just all like the things that you think about is what makes your character, I guess. So as a man is what he thinks about all day long. How can he possibly be anything else? So it's a case of, and he mentions, so choose the right thoughts. A lot of self-help books will give that advice of up and affirmations and things like that. And I don't think I'm going to apply that one, because I think if you have to believe in it, you have to just fully be committed to it and believe in it for it to work. And I don't know. I personally don't, but you are the product of your thoughts. So if you do try, at least even force yourself to think positively, eventually it will go in. An interest that I wasn't expecting, because it's I just don't expect religion, things like that, to come up in these types of books. But yeah, he did mention prayer, and who don't believe, you don't have a religion, then other routes as well. But he did mention prayer, as in, if you don't pray, if you don't align to a certain religious belief, then a case of writing down, diary keeping, things like that will help. And the reason why they do is because you have to put into words what your problem is. So often if you work then, and someone actually asks you, say a close person, because what's the matter, what's the issue, you might find it difficult to actually even put it into words. If you can't even define what your problem is, then it's difficult to come to a solution. And I guess prayer or writing a diary, if you have to describe your problem, you have burden is slightly coming off your shoulder, and you truly believe it, or if you're writing it down for some reason, it's come off your mind a little bit. So there is that, and by doing that, it is the first. If you outwardly say your problem so many times, and I think anytime if you're religious and you do pray, sometimes you do say an action that you're going to do to try and help solve. So in principle, just put in a step like, okay, I'm going to do this, and there's only so many you the same thing and you say I'm going to do it. Eventually, you are likely to action it. So there is that. As well is putting a stop loss on your worry and limiting your losses. So essentially saying, by what I've set out to do, then I need to change my method. Obviously, with something like that, be realistic in the times that you're giving yourself, because if you're not giving yourself enough time to test out a method, to test out a solution, there, and you're just going from one thing to another, you haven't solution in its entirety, and it might have been the solution, but because you haven't given it enough time, it wouldn't have worked. So obviously you need to be careful with that, but it is important that you do put some sort of time limit into the solution that you're trying to solve your problem with. Am I spending too long on this and it hasn't worked yet? So it does need a bit of objective, and I want to use it enough, to be honest, and I do want to start using it, which I do. So how much is your eyesight worth? That your ability to work, to walk, to really valuable things that a lot of us have to have, right? But you don't, thinking about it. Oh, I have these things that I should be grateful for. So yeah, he gives advice on counting your blessings, your troubles, and worse. And he mentions, as a way to sort of confirm that, he brings up a story. Now, I'm not sure if he did say at the beginning of the book, so I'm going to take his word for it, that all of the stories are true. The stories that he gives around these pieces of advice are true, based on people he's actually met that have done these things. So a story that he gives is this person that was just talking about his worries, and he decided, when too overwhelmed with the issues that he has, he would go to a library, any library, and he would go to the history section and pick out any book and pick out any chapter within that book and just have a read of it for once. That would sort of just let him know that how, essentially, there's been much worse things that have happened in the world. So essentially, the world has always been full of troubles and issues, and in no time has there been sort of anyone trouble free, or just the world in general. There's the governments that we are under. They've never been perfect. Of course they haven't. If you read history even a little bit, and is the situation now in well at least depending than they have been historically. So there is that to be grateful. Basically, it's just I'm not sure, because I think I just think even if you have been privileged enough to have all of these blessings, it can be difficult to see when you have an issue. It's when you have a problem, and it depends on your problem as well, and it doesn't matter that there are people that have it worse off than you, right? Because that's always going to be the case. Someone that has a lot of troubles, a lot of objective problems on recent deaths, there will be someone that's dealt with more, right? So it's. I don't think the aim of that piece of advice was to invalidate your problems. I think invalidate is a word. Problems are real. It's not that they're not there, and it's not that they should be taken as a joke or anything like that. It's just what you do with it, right? I think that's the point of it. And it is useful to humble yourself and just think about what's going on in other parts of the world now. Think about think about history and things like that, and hopefully that will give you some perspective. And when you are feeling really, really bad, it might shine. It might do something for you. But yeah, there's always going to be people for you. So going on that basis then will ever be allowed. No one's problem is if you go on that basis, because yeah, advice for part of the book, so that it's a bit it's not as is about and he essentially ignore unjust. It's difficult to, and he says things like if you are being criticized, it's probably because you've got, I think that's a quote, yeah, no one ever kicks a dead dog. So you must have something. Someone is either criticizing you to help you improve, or it can be malicious, I guess, malicious criticism. But he essentially says ignore unjust criticism and be your own harshest critic. So just on ignore your unjust criticism, it's difficult to define what's unjust. I guess when you are being criticized, it can be easy to think all of that criticism is unjust. It's really difficult to separate yourself from the criticism and be as objective as possible. So at that point, it is difficult to define. You would really need, I would say, a third person that's your friend or a family that is obviously not scared of being truthful for you. Actually, that person said what's that advice given is fair. You know, sometimes you do that, or things like that. So it's difficult to be objective. So that unjust criticism is that would define it. How am I supposed to be objective? It's difficult. It mentions either once a week. I don't know if he mentions daily, but I think once to write down all of the things that you can do next time, I guess, and do that once a week. So as a self-reflection thing, which I like. I think that's fair. I think it does depend on how you are, though, because some people are overly harsh on themselves. So some people will pick things for themselves that others don't see as a problem, right? So it just depends on what state of mind you're in. That would be a useful thing to do. If it might not be useful at all if you are harsh and unrealistically harsh, where actually no one would even say that, and you're writing it down every week. It can be a bit damaging to your confidence. But if you are confident enough and you know you're in a reasonable place, obviously if you're reading this book, you must be a worrier. But if you know you're in a reasonable place, just trying to be as fair to yourself as possible. Try and pick out things that happen throughout the week that you would say objectively are bad things that you've done. And look at, I think the more times you're writing it down as well, so it does eventually put a step, because there's only so many times you can write the same bad thing and not do anything about it. Yes, that's the good thing as well. When you do write it down, with anything, when you write, I liked it. It just depends on what your style of self-help book is and things like that, what you prefer. But I liked it. I think there's some solid pieces of advice. I would say about 95% of the advice I'd already heard before or read somewhere else before. So, but it's just the content behind them that makes it a bit more likely that the advice is going to stick, and I will actually try it out. So I think I will try. Just as the self-help book has actually helped you in some way, and you've applied something and you've like, wow, it's actually worked. Or it's worded in a certain way that pushes you to actually apply it, because plenty of times people can say something to you, but sometimes it's that one instance said in a certain way that really gets to you and actually pushes you to do something different. So it's difficult to say if a help book is good until you might realize years later, after you've subconsciously, I guess, I think that's the word, subconsciously applied some of these. I've improved quite a lot. I haven't done that in many years. Could be because of the self-help book. Could be. So it's a good book. I would recommend, if you're not going to read, I think even the audio, like me, listen to the audio. The voice is very soothing. And if you struggle to sleep a little bit, by that I don't mean it's boring. I just mean it's a soothing voice, I guess. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you got a bit more out of it. The background is a bit better. Yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.